TopMedTalk.
Well, hello and welcome to TopMedTalk. We are here at Anesthesiology 2024 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for the annual meeting of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. I'm Desiree Chappell, your host today for our conversation, and I'm joined by my co-host and co-editor-in-chief of TopMedTalk, Professor Mike Grocott. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Usual buzz in the air. The exhibition hall is filling more and more as the morning goes on. And we're having a little bit less construction noise in the background, which is good.
We've had a lot of that over the last day. Really excited about the weekend, to hear more from some amazing key opinion leaders and presenters here at the meeting. And this conversation we're getting ready to have, we very quickly, though, want to first thank the American Society of Anesthesiologists for having us here on the booth within the exhibit hall, right next to center stage. We couldn't do this without them. We couldn't do this and keep TopMedTalk free and open access to the world without our generous sponsors, Edwards Life Sciences, GE Healthcare, and Medtronic, who have been keeping TopMedTalk free and open to all of our listeners across the world. So thank you very, very much. Now, I'm very excited about this next conversation because we've been talking about having this for a very long time. Frank Chan from Medtronic, he's Vice President of Acute Care and Monitoring Business. Frank, thank you so much for finally sitting down with us.
Desiree,
making it happen.
It's great to be here. I think the last time we talked was right in the middle of the pandemic.
Like a month before. I was looking at the date the other day of when we traveled there, and that was the last trip that I know I took.
It feels like a world apart, right?
Yeah, absolutely, a long time ago. Well, Frank, for our listeners, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, of course. I started off life as an orthopedic bioengineer. Yeah. And I spent the first half of my career in the orthopedics and spine space. And the second half of my career really has been in critical care, anesthesia, and functionally as an engineer to start, I've kind of evolved into different areas. And for the last 10 years, I've led a number of different businesses. And today I'm the president of Medtronic's acute care and monitoring business.
Coming from that engineering background, it's a different lens by which you probably look at some of the things that you have led over the years.
Yeah, innovation in medicine is truly a cross-functional effort. And it's never been more important and obvious to me with the complexity of the world and complexity of patients and patient care that we can't innovate without close partnerships with the clinical community. And it really is a 1 + 1 = 3 in terms of the work that you do as clinicians, the work that we do as technologists to come together to really improve the lives of patients who depend on technologies.
Yeah, absolutely. Frank, I know that you're also very passionate about patient safety and, of course, leading a large company in technology and how that interfaces with patients, making sure that's safe. Tell us a little bit more about what you do in that space.
Yeah, the fundamental purpose of the acute care and monitoring business is really to enable patient safety, and we do this with what we hope to be great technologies for healthcare professionals to help you manage your patients better, and really anytime and anywhere. And as a healthcare technology company, we're focused on ensuring that the technologies have excellent clinical performance and that they're targeted to very specific clinical problems that matter to you as clinicians, to administrators, payers, and patients as well, and that they fundamentally have the effectiveness and efficacy to actually improve outcomes and hopefully improve cost and ultimately to expand access to more and more patients around the world.
Talk to us a little bit about, you mentioned the collaboration with the clinician.
We can't do this alone. And so when you think of our mission, which is 75 years old this year, so it's an enduring mission, and it is to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. Now, our perspective, of course, is on the medical technology side. Now, we can't understand physiology and clinical problems without partnerships with all of you and the broader community. And so with that, we understand the insights, the challenges that all of you face. So their clinical problems, their workflow problems, what patients should and should not experience in their care. And then we work collaboratively together between technology and the clinical medical side in order to develop technologies that are really effective at helping you do your jobs better. That's fundamentally what we aim to do.
Yeah.
So Frank, I'm really interested in this, the relationship between industry and clinicians, because we've got all tied up in issues around conflict of interest historically. But I mean, it seems to me self-evident, we can't develop these kind of technologies unless we develop them in partnership. And actually, I think our funders are much more focused on the notion that they can not only improve health, but, for example, our National Institute of Health Research in the UK talks about improving the health and wealth of the nation. Are you finding those relationships easier to navigate these days, or has nothing changed?
No, I do find it easier to navigate, and I think it's the broad recognition that we can engage in a nonpartisan discussion with the patient in the center of our focus. And in fact, in many situations, we not only work with clinicians and clinical and medical societies, we also work with regulators, and we work with researchers, and we work with standards bodies also in order to together talk about the challenges that the clinical community and their patients face. And then we either develop collaboratively better testing and development standards, even guidelines for the use of certain kinds of technologies that will ultimately improve outcomes. And so I do think it has been more collaborative, and the recognition that we can have a nonpartisan discussion has actually been a huge opportunity for us, I think, to make even more advancements more quickly.
And I'm also, this is slightly mischievous, but I'm also intrigued, sort of socio-cultural perspective, the difference between the orthopedic environment and the anesthesiology environment. Is it different?
That's
You're among
provocative. That's a little provocative, but it's also time frame as well. When I was in the orthopedic and spine space, it was earlier in the last couple of decades, and that was a different environment. And and then I moved into anesthesia, critical care space, and that's recent times. So is it different? No, I think where I'd say it's similar is that bidirectional conversation has always occurred. And it has always been the case that engineering or technology in medicine has to be a partnership. And the question then becomes how that's done.
Yeah.
And it has been, I think, a real boon. I hope to the clinical community that our partnerships are strong.
Yeah.
And that we can have tough conversations and challenge each other in terms of how practice is delivered, but how technology is also incorporated the right way.
You can't walk into a modern operating room or critical care unit without it being extremely obvious that the technology underpins almost everything we do. I mean, you need the person-to-patient care, but that is very much supported by technology, be it ventilators or monitors or anesthetic machines.
Yeah, that's right. And if you think about our design principles in what we're trying to accomplish, of course, table stakes would be clinical performance of a given technology.
Yeah.
It's also important that every technology has a targeted clinical usage or application in a way that matters to all stakeholders. And I think one way it's changed is it used to be targeted to the clinicians, but now we have to also consider the administrators, payers, and obviously the patient's always been at the center of everything we do. So when we think of design, we think clinical performance, economic value. We also think, how does it help your workflow? Because
And not impede. I'm sorry to interrupt, but not impede the workflow.
That's right. And definitely not impede the workflow, because the best technology won't be adopted by any clinician, whether it's a physician or a nurse or a respiratory therapist or whatnot, if it doesn't fit in his or her day-to-day routine.
And hopefully improve.
And when we think of technologies like remote monitoring technologies or technologies that can help reduce alarms, or improve the fidelity of alarms, or one day help you with aggregating information that helps you make your day-to-day decisions a little bit faster, not to take decision rights away from you, that's not our intent,
Right.
but to give you something that allows you to assimilate quickly and then be able to act hopefully quickly and perhaps better with more accuracy and more precision. And that's kind of what we aim to do, is provide technologies that help you manage and personalize care for your patients.
So Frank, I mean, you've, as you described, have several decades. We won't count how many in the engineering and
Thank you, I appreciate that.
device development space, and considerable experience in the critical care space. What's coming? What are the themes? What are the new types of devices we're going to see in the coming years?
Yeah, let me start with what we've been informed about, as a community. And this is wholly in partnership with all of you, which, if you look at the trends, there's staffing shortages and increased caregiver-patient ratios, or the reverse, increased patient-caregiver ratios that really challenge the way that you prioritize care and may or may not have a patient safety component to that. So if you think of technologies that can improve workflow, whether it's being able to connect or monitor a patient wherever the patient might be or wherever you might be in a hospital or outside the hospital. So that could be a direction in terms of what's coming next. You think of sicker patients moving into lower acuity areas of the hospital and then into the home. So there's a trend that the four walls of a traditional hospital will start disintegrating.
Yeah, seen that a lot.
And so as a technology provider, what are the tools and solutions that we can offer for clinicians and institutions to be able to manage a larger volume of patients, sicker patients, as they move throughout and even post-discharge? So think, for example, of wearable technologies, and then what is the ecosystem that has to be built around those to be effective? Again, technologies that are really cool, but don't fit in a workflow will simply not be adopted. And so those are some of the things that come to mind, Mike.
And there's a huge amount of work around the application of those types of technologies. I mean, it's very appealing. The notion of wearables and hospital at home is super appealing, but I'm not sure we've worked out how to deliver it safely and effectively.
That's right. And it goes back to a concept that I've recently learned about, implementation science.
Yes.
Megan Lane Falls talks about that quite frequently. Yeah. It's a combination of technology that you use because it's interoperable.
Yes. It's
technology that is comfortable and will drive patient compliance, because you might use it if it's not comfortable on a patient or not convenient, especially as a patient goes from hospital to home, then it also won't be used.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think there's a culture change component to implementation. And it is a change in what people have been trained to do. And it's a change in the operating procedures of a hospital. But I firmly believe that all of us as individuals and teams and organizations have to be agile to kind of meet the changing needs of the environment.
Yeah.
And that environment is dictated by you as clinicians, the administrators of the hospitals, because they have certain challenges, like budget constraints, and then patients.
So we talk about technologies coming in, and as a clinician, there's been plenty of times in my career where someone has put a new device in front of me. There's been no support for that, or very little one day of coming in and this is your new, little box that you're going to be using. I really feel like that's been different for Medtronic. And it sounds like as we advance these technologies that really kind of are more integrated into all the points of care being delivered. Talk to us a little bit about the support in the change management piece and all the things that we need to be able to do to get this implemented.
Yeah, as you asked that question, a couple of thoughts come to mind. One is fundamentally when we start a design or we think of an innovation, it's in conjunction and partnership with our customers so that we really understand the problem to be solved. We define user requirements in conjunction with our clinical stakeholders for sure. We have human factors and design thinking that's really important, as we move forward because of the multifactorial nature of implementation and adoption, And then finally, when we launch technologies, we sometimes launch them in limited fashion. Mm-hmm. We call them limited market releases. And there we do some real world assessments of, is it working the way that we expected it to, that we both expected it to in the design process? And then we go through a process of optimizing as well. And then that really kind of dials it in. And then after that, it's a whole value stream of continuous improvement for time to come, really, until the technology is no longer available, And so it is actually a continuous process.
Yeah.
And I'm interested, you obviously raise value. We as clinicians and you as industry are expected very reasonably to improve value in everything we do. But it's what you've just described, that relationship between the device and the clinician and the workflow and how the device is used, that's a very complex interaction. How do you as a company set about demonstrating value from those kind of changes?
It really starts with understanding very specific clinical problems that need to be solved. I believe, having been in the industry for an undisclosed number of decades, that at one point you created technology and it was adopted for various reasons. But the concept of dialing in not just the clinical problem that it addresses, but does it have an economic benefit associated with it? And a lot of our technologies are technologies that allow you and your institutions to avoid significant costs, because our technologies play a role in helping you reduce complications that are common, that happen frequently, and that generally have a significant cost burden. And you think of technologies that can help reduce the incidence of postoperative delirium or improve your ability to intubate on first attempt, and so when you're not able to do that or prevent some of those preventable complications from happening, then it becomes a workflow problem. It's very expensive.
Yeah.
And of course, not to forget the most important thing, it hurts the patient.
It's a disaster for the patient. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. We've talked about some of the technologies, and with that comes a lot of data that has to be processed. And, that's a lot for us to assimilate and really try and figure out when you're a nurse on the ward and you're getting all this information from potentially a wearable that is not what we've ever dealt with before. We had vital signs every 4 hours and that's it. So talk to us a little bit about how we deal with data.
Yeah, that's evolving quickly. And it's a really exciting part of the world of medtech as well as where we're heading as well. So, this business alone touches 115 million patients every year.
Wow.
So if you think about that and the amount of data that we have access to, it's a lot. Now, if you just take that at the level of each patient and each clinician, you still have, whether in the OR or ICU, a plethora, a world of information in front of you. And so what we are attempting to do is to move from data to insights, and then eventually to intelligence. And the ultimate goal is either predictive and ultimately preventative intelligence. We're not there yet. I think if we can say that we've moved from insights to improving clinical decision support, then perhaps we can lay some claim as a community that, we have some technology out there. But the ultimate goal is to move to that consolidation and that intelligence to help speed of clinical decision-making and accuracy of patient management.
Now, I'm interested. I don't know if this story is true, but I was told it, so I'm going to repeat it. There was a great project in London looking at prediction of renal outcome using all sorts of variables, and it was done with Google DeepMind. And
the prediction of what?
Of renal failure, kidney failure.
Kidney failure, yeah.
And it was done with Google DeepMind, and the assertion was that when they did the processing, it used up a significant proportion, more than a fifth of Google's at-the-time processing power.
Wow.
Now, the data that we're talking about in critical care is very high resolution across multiple streams, and the prediction, you can see there's the possibility of prediction of adverse outcome by stitching all that together, but do we actually have the capability and the processing power to deliver on that at the moment?
I think we do, possibly not in real time, but there are ways, and I think this is why generative AI is not yet omnipresent in medical technology. But to use machine learning and sophisticated neural networks to process a wide amount of data and to use that to tune algorithms and the output of technology, that's possible. And then I think you do that in iterative steps. I think the real-time data processing is where the issue is. And candidly, not every institution has the capabilities, the cloud infrastructure and the computing infrastructure. So you kind of have to do it piecemeal at this point.
Yeah.
I'm sure that will change very quickly. That whole area is evolving.
And extraordinary opportunities.
It is.
Well, Frank, as we're wrapping up here, tell us a little bit. Medtronic and acute care monitoring has really kind of evolved recently. So tell us just a little bit about that, because we've always known Medtronic and some of the products that you've had in the past. How has that changed and where are you guys going?
Yeah. So, Medtronic is the enterprise that acute care monitoring is part of. And so we're one of 15 operating companies within the corporation. The common thread across all of this is the mission of alleviating pain, restoring health, and extending life. And we all have a role in doing that. Our particular role is to provide airway management, video laryngoscopy, and patient monitoring technologies that we hope we earn, your trust as clinicians to consider us your technology provider of choice. And that hasn't changed. What has changed is structurally, we've put a number of businesses together under one. And that's always very exciting. We have a broader portfolio, and with that, we have the ability to do more and serve more patients the way we do.
Well, lastly, I think we've talked about the collaboration and the interface between industry and clinicians and how that can impact patient safety, and that's a priority for all of us. You've recently joined the Anesthesia Patient Safety Foundation on the board of directors.
I've been really privileged to have been associated with the APSF over the last few years that I've been in this space. And recently, the great privilege has been to join the board. And so to be able to, thank you very much, to be able to be part of that conversation and to participate and to inject, a unique perspective that I bring as a non-clinician, but somebody who's highly vested in patient safety from the technology side to the conversation. I believe back to our original conversation that this is all about a cross-functional, multifunctional partnership that I believe can become more and more effective over time. And Desiree, we're really looking forward to having you on the board as well. And so we get to work with each other in numerous dimensions. Yeah. And so congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
I think striking and to be celebrated that the APSF, hugely respected for great work over many years, it is seeking to build a board that is representative of all different aspects of the delivery of healthcare.
Yeah. And what it truly reflects who we are and what we do as a community.
That's right.
That's wonderful. Right. I'm excited to work with you on that as well, Frank. So
I'm feeling left out.
I know. Well, Mike, come on, join us. I'm sure we will be in consultation with things that we're talking about there, I'm sure. Frank, what a pleasure to sit down. Thank you so much for taking time out of what I know is a very busy meeting for you to join us here on TopMedTalk.
Desiree, it has been an immense pleasure. Thank you so much. And Mike, it was great to meet you. And thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you for listening to TopMedTalk. You can always find us on social media. We're on X, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. If you find us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up because we always love those little extra props there for us. Leave a comment if you like what you hear. We always love to see those as well. So again, thank you for listening, and thank you to the ASA again for this lovely booth and all of our sponsors that keep the lights on here at TopMedTalk. So thanks so much. Cheers, everybody.
TopMedTalk. Thanks for downloading TopMedTalk. Don't forget to subscribe. Check us out on YouTube and, of course, on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and X. Also, it's important to remember that TopMedTalk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, evidence-based perioperative medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that, and the way to do that is ebpom.org. Check out our website and find out about some of the incredible conferences we're going to be arranging across the year. ebpom.org.